again, it's James. I'm back in the shop today, not my shop this time. I'm up at my son and his family's home in Washington State. You know, I'm very passionate about my woodworking. My son has a passion all of his own. He makes beer. And we have a project that might be of interest to some of you people who already brew beer. And it'll be about how to bottle. We're going to be making a bottling station. And we'll probably go through all the steps that it takes to do it. One thing about this beer, he has thoroughly spoiled my wife and I. We have our favorite beers, and we won't drink them anyplace but here. So if you like beer, and if you like beer that's fresh and delicious, you ought to be making your own beer too. Hopefully this will get you started. So let me introduce Wade. This is my son Wade, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his brewery, how he got started maybe. How did you get started?
Well, I've been wanting to brew for a long time, and my wife got me a kit. So one of those kits that you get at a homebrew shop, and it comes with the malts and some grains and some yeast, and it's just a box filled with some ingredients. And it sat there for probably a couple of months while I thought about actually trying to brew my first beer. And finally, it was probably over a holiday, 8 years ago, because I started when my son was born, or right before he was born, or he was born. I just decided, let's do it. And I made a beer, and it wasn't amazing, but it was fun. Like, it was something that I made. I equate it to the same kind of sense of value you get out of making a project in your shop. It may not be as amazing as anything anyone else could make, but you made it, right? And so it was a beer that I made, and I thought it was delicious, and I enjoyed it, and I had all these bottles, and so I just kept going. So I started on my stove in the kitchen, and eventually I ended up, as you can see, getting quite a few other vessels and pieces of equipment, and it's turned into quite the hobby. So. All right, so this is the device that we use for filling the bottles. It's actually pretty straightforward. You could build this yourself if you wanted to. I ended up getting this from morebeer.com. Basically, there's a couple of elements to it. The first is right here, we actually connect this side to our beer. So this will end up getting connected to a quick disconnect, plugged into a keg or plugged directly into the conical fermenter. So beer will end up coming in through here. On this side, we're going to plug this hose into our CO2 regulator so that we can end up keeping this under pressure. It's not going to be a lot of pressure, it's a few pounds of pressure. Now, what happens is, based on the position of this ball valve in here, you're going to be able to either let beer flow in, or you're going to end up letting CO2 flow in. So what happens is, you put a bottle on, you end up opening it up so that CO2 can get in, and you twist this right here so that it basically can evacuate all of the oxygen and all the air out of the bottle. So you're getting the bottle primed and ready to go. Then you close this, and what it's going to happen is it's going to build a little bit of pressure. So that pressure is important, especially if you're going to be filling carbonated beer, because if you don't have it under pressure, then what happens is, as soon as the beer gets in there, it's going to end up foaming. So once it's under pressure, you'll turn it off, and then you'll end up opening it up so that beer can flow in. Now, if there's too much pressure, then the beer doesn't go in. So it's got to be, the right balance. You can also, as the beer flows in, CO2 needs to escape. So you can control the flow rate of the beer coming in based on the CO2 as it gets pushed out of the bottle. So that's the device. It's pretty straightforward. And this is the device that's going to be mounted to the brew station, and the bottling station that we're going to build. That's going to get attached here and make it such that we can end up pretty easily bottling beer.
And we'll show a diagram of what we intend to build in just a second.
All right, so here's the chicken scratch that highlights how and what we're going to end up building. So real quick, if we zoom out a little bit, you'll notice that over here we've got this where the mash tun is. we're going to end up using the frame and the brew stand effectively as the basis for the bottling station. So right here is a 2x6 that we're going to end up taking, and we're going to actually put a couple of holes into the 2x6, and we're going to end up drilling the holes through this board here, which is also a 2x6, in a couple of places, so that we can end up using some screws and effectively mount it onto the brew stand. So that way I don't have to have a separate thing sitting around the brewery. It's something that I can put away when I'm done, and we can just attach and get it out of the way. Now the next thing you'll notice is, and this is not to scale by the way, is there's a 2x, well it says 2x8. There's basically going to be a board at the bottom, and that's where we're going to set the bottle down. So and it's got to be big enough to fit like one of those 22-ounce bombers as well as a 12-ounce bottle. So that's going to end up getting set down here. Then we're going to have a 2x6 that kind of goes up. Now again, not to scale, but we want it to be about at the height or maybe a little bit shorter than a traditional long neck bottle. And that's because we're going to end up drilling two half-inch holes into the top here and here down in, and we're going to end up sinking into that some aluminum tubing. Into that aluminum tubing, then we're going to take these, what is it, a 3/8 inch screw I think, and we're going to end up putting it into the tubing, and then attached to it we're going to put a piece of wood at the top with a hinge and another piece of wood, and then the device that we actually use to end up filling the bottles of beer. So basically at the end of the day, what we're going to end up having is something that you can move up and down here so that you can end up getting different heights based on the different bottles, but it's also going to have a hinge right here so that you can take it and you can end up pivoting it out so that you can slide a bottle in on an angle and then put it back down vertical so that you can set the bottle down. So that's the goal.
So we're speeding up the video, and I'll do some narrating on how the beer bottling station is going to be built while you can watch him build it. Wade was lucky enough that he had a bunch of wood left over from a previous project, so we didn't have to buy very much. So he's marking the mounting holes. He's got it clamped to the front of the station, and he's going to have 4 holes to mount this using a 1/2 inch drill, and he's going to drill through both pieces of wood. And then we're going to use 1/2 inch bolts through with wing nuts so that it would be easy to put on and take off. So that's the completion of the mounting system. Now he's going to be cutting various pieces of wood, and that'll become the actual beer bottling station itself. So we're going to mount this piece of wood to that previous piece of wood, and he's going to drill some pilot holes into the top just to make sure they're straight, because we're going to be actually drilling some pretty deep holes with a 1/2 inch drill bit, and that's the holes that the aluminum tubes are going to be inserted into, and those will guide the threaded rods that will allow the station to become taller or shorter as needs be. So very careful to drill these plumb. We're just cutting that piece to size. Making sure everything is plumb. And figuring out the proper depth of these aluminum tubes. And we used blue tape to mark how deep those holes had to be drilled. Just an easy way to be accurate. So once the hole is deep enough, we're going to mark how deep the tube should be inserted into the wood, and then tap it in and then cut it off so that, like that, and then tap the rest in, and now we have a sleeve for those threaded rods to slide up and down. It'll just keep it snug all the way up and all the way down. So those are the threaded rods that we're going to use, and we're going to mount a piece of wood to the top, which will actually hold the bottling apparatus, and we'll be able to slide that up and down as previously stated. So there's the upper piece of wood there. And then we can cut off the threaded rods, just put jam nuts up on top so that everything stays put. And so now we have to break it in a little bit. It's a little bit tight, but as we used it, it got a bunch looser. So now we're going to actually mount the piece of wood that we've prepared to that front piece that's going to be bolted on. He's making sure everything's square and plumb. And we'll glue and screw it. And we took a 2x8, cut the corners off to make the platform. That'll be notched out and then screwed to that previous 2x4. So the easiest way to cut out that piece, put holes in the corners so you can turn the corner with a jigsaw, and then we're going to just cut it the size of a 2x4. And he's going to glue and screw that into place. Clamp it first. And we're using, I believe, 2.5-inch decking screws to hold this whole thing together. And that's the hinge up on the upper piece that's going to be attached to the other piece of wood. So that'll allow the station to tip. So you can slide a bottle in underneath.
All right, so you've seen what we've been doing over the last several hours, cutting up pieces and trying different things out, and so we wanted to show you where we ended up. Basically, what you saw us building are a set of screws that end up getting, they go through and are capped up here, and so this gives us the ability to move it up and down so that we can end up adjusting based on, whether we're doing a 22-ounce bomber or we're just doing a regular 12-ounce long neck. And so this will end up being here at the height that we want. And then for the device that actually fills, which I believe we showed already, this will end up being mounted right here. And so with the hinge, we can also tilt it out so that we can slip a bottle on, move it down, and then just put it into place. So we're going to end up mounting this by taking these little screws and screwing it in, and they'll be sticking out a little bit and facing to the left on either side. And then we're basically just going to take these little hose clamps and slide it into behind the bent screw and tighten it, so it'll end up getting tightened right onto here. And so we think that'll end up being a pretty good mount for it. So we'll catch you in a bit. All right, so we've got it all set up. Let me explain how this works. So here I've got a keg full of beer. This is actually a English mild ale, nice and light, roasty, medium-bodied beer, quite delicious. This is a carbon dioxide tank, and I've got two lines. It's running between like 10 to 14 psi. One of the lines is coming up here to the keg, and that's keeping the keg pressurized so that it'll push the beer out. This other line comes in here, and what we're going to use that for is for purging the oxygen out of the bottle and then keeping the bottle under pressure while we fill it with carbonated beer. If we didn't have it under pressure, then the beer would just foam up and it would be a total mess. And that's actually the beauty of this system. A couple of notes: we have not yet polyurethaned it. I will be doing that after James leaves. But we didn't want to, end this without having showed you the bottling process. So I put a rag here just because I don't want it to stain the wood yet ahead of us using the polyurethane on it. And so here I've got some sanitary solution in a bucket. I've already sanitized the bottle. I've also got my bottle capper in here being sanitized. I've got a glass here filled with sanitary solution with some bottle caps. And then I filled this bottle up with sanitizer as well, so that it kind of allows me to rest it in there, sanitize, and I've already kind of preloaded the line with everything. So we should be pretty much set to go. I'm gonna go ahead and get a new bottle. And so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna purge all the oxygen out of the bottle. That's gonna give it a longer shelf life. And we'll do that. Let me make sure I do this in the right direction. Let's go ahead and fill this with CO2. And we're going to purge all the oxygen by letting it basically leak out. So that's getting rid of the oxygen in there. All right, so now it's pressurized. So we're going to go ahead and start. This opens up the flow, but notice nothing's coming out, and that's because this is under pressure. So we actually need to slowly open this valve so that see how when we start to let some of it escape, then the beer ends up filling it. So that is now filling at a, okay, right, we can turn it up a little bit. I'll play with this a little bit. It's been a while since I've used it, but there's a balance in the rate of filling it so that you don't end up getting too much carbonation or too much foam in there from the carbonation. But the best part about this is totally hands-free at this point. And so I can be here, and in the past I'd be on the floor and I'd be trying to keep all these things kind of up and going and holding onto this myself, and now we've got this perfect station for it. And I mean, this is really going to change my approach and my willingness to bottle. I'll be a lot more willing now to bottle than I have in the past. So I'm just going to turn that up a little bit more, but you can see it's filling up very nicely. And when it gets pretty much to the top, we're going to see some of the foam come out here a little bit. That's totally normal. It's just going to be getting rid of some of that foam. But I'm going to stop it right about here at the top. So start slowing it down. Right about there. Okay. We'll shut this off. And so now what I'm going to do is actually, now that it's closed, I'm going to open this up again, and any additional CO2, what's that? Okay. Any CO2 now I'm going to release from there so that it's not still under pressure. And we can slide this off. All right, let that sit there. Get a cap. Capper, and a little bit awkward here, but doing it for your sake, and there we have it, perfectly bottled beer. So pretty neat. Hopefully that's not staining right now, but I'm tickled. This is fantastic. This is everything I hoped for. So hope you found this interesting.
Well, thanks for watching. This was an interesting video for me, for Wayne to show us how he makes and bottles beer. I never knew how it was done until tonight. I know it's a different kind of video than I normally do, but I hope you found it interesting and enjoyable. Hit the subscribe button down there, hit the like button, tell your friends, and come on back next time, because I'm headed back to Colorado tomorrow. We're going to do some more videos with the CNC machine. But thanks to Wayne for showing us his brewery and how he's going to be bottling beer from now on. Come back soon.